Hey, welcome to FailCraft. I'm Hammy. Hope you are well and good. It has just been BlizzCon 2015, and this bees the Monday after BlizzCon, when all in the house, not a creature was stirring, for everyone was knackered from a convention. Not quite the Christmas fairy tale that we're used to in terms of teeing up Christmas, but it is only the beginning of November, although the Christmas adverts in the UK are already playing full steam ahead. However, we are not here for Christmas adverts, we are here for none other than the League of Explorers. I need a suitably epic logo to put over the top of that. Do you know what? I've got an epic logo for you. Yes, we have an epic logo, the League of Explorers. So, it's a new adventure. It's a Hearthstone new adventure. It is releasing none other than this Thursday, depending on your time zone, 12th of November 2015, coming to a Hearthstone server near you. What we're going to do is jump away from our epic logo, which I've actually quite enjoyed, and we're going to jump on in and look at all 45 cards in a little bit of a sprint through. We're going to do some analysis, top line, keep it new player focused, have a think about decks it could fit into, and see how we go. We have our heroes of the League of Explorers. We have Reno Jackson, the greedy treasure hunter, with a hat that looks strangely familiar to those of you who are fans of Steven Spielberg-styled adventure movies bearing people with hats, whips, and a fear of snakes. Harrison Jones, I'm just saying. We then have Elise Starseeker. A big welcome to Religion. Hey! And everyone joining live, of course, twitch.tv/FailCraft Casts. We have Elise Starseeker, the cartographer of the League of Explorers, the one who knows where all of the skeletons are buried, but also all of the treasures too. She is very much your guide in this adventure mode, as we've discovered on the Blizzcon panel. We have Brann Bronzebeard in the top right. Well known to those of you who have explored Uldaman in World of Warcraft as well as other places. I believe he's the head of the League of Explorers. And then last but not least we have in the bottom right the dashing, the debonair, the suave Sir Finley Mrrgglton. That's a really bad roll, but it's the best I'm going to do. It's a Monday. It's been a long day. So Sir Finley Mrrgglton, these four, each adventure into a different wing, or into a different place. We have Reno, he adventures. Brann, he also adventures. Finley Mrrgglton also adventures. And then Elise helps you at the end to make sure that you get all the different pieces and hopefully, who knows, we don't know, keep the staff of origination. That is the little plot of our adventure. But we've done the plot in a previous video. If you want to look at all of the top line details, the lore, the story of the League of Explorers, have a look in the top. I'm going to go left. You'll be able to see our other video where we covered the BlizzCon announcement. This is about cards. Let's jump on into the world of cards and see what we have. So, what can I say about the cards? I'm going to, before we cover the Ancient Shade, I'm going to have a little chat about keywords. Now remember, of course, we have a new keyword as of Inspire. And Inspire is, of course, a new keyword as of the Grand Tournament, the expansion released not too long ago. So take a little sip of my N70. The finest tea on the Citadel, if you're a Mass Effect fan indeed. Now, Inspire means that whenever a hero power is triggered, or whenever you trigger hero power, effect X on the card takes place. We now have a new one, and that keyword is Discover. Now what Discover means is, you discover, then it's, with any conditions it says on the card, it might be Discover a 1-mana card. Discover will mean that X cards are drawn. I think it's generally three. They can only be neutral minions or class cards of the class that you are. So, if you play a card and it says Discover, you will be given 3 random cards. Neutral minions, your class cards, and you'll get to pick one. So think of tracking, but for neutral minions and for your specific class cards. That is Discover. That is the new keyword. Let's investigate it more in a little bit. First we have the Ancient Shade. It is low activation. You can play it pretty low. And remember, when we talk in a new player-friendly sense of a solid minion, is it solid? Is it mana roughly equal to its attack and health? Could you just play it and it will be reasonably effective? That's a solid minion. It's a good way of just comparing the mana cost of a card to the health to the attack and just getting a rough idea of if it's good and if the text isn't negative, as it were. So the Battle Cry, this is where the money comes in, because you can see that this has a stupid amount of attack for its mana cost, but shuffle an Ancient Curse into your deck and deal 7 damage to you when drawn. Now, this is a high effectiveness in the early game, but then designed to have a downside in the late game. The problem with this is that 4 health, even on turn 4, is quite easy to remove. your Ancient Shade, unless you can buff the health, unless you can protect it behind a tank, it is not going to survive long, and then you're going to take 7 damage later in the game. I'm going to go ahead and say that off the top of my head, without decks built around it, unless you can buff it and keep it alive or put it behind a tank, I don't think it's worth it. People might try and use it in rush decks. Please do correct me if I'm wrong. It's nasty early on. It doesn't have charge. Its health is low. You need to find a way of putting health and tanking behind it or in front of it if you're going to make it survive. Next we have an Animated Armor. Now I like this card very much. I have a feeling that mages are going to try and squeeze this in, for it is a mage card, as you can tell by the text around it. It's an animated suit of armour that protects you. Your hero can only take 1 damage at a time. Now I think that this could see some play. If you try and and a big welcome to Jay-Z Kurz joining us. Jay-Z Kurz, we must have a chat about your wonderful Overwatch videos later on when we play some Overwatch, but big welcome. Animated Armor, your hero can only take 1 damage at a time. Now I think that, you remember of course we do have there are people who play sort of a nice big stally, kind of freezy kind of mage style. I quite like this. That the health is low, it can be taken out, but as soon as it hits the table, if it's behind a tank, if it's in a late game, your opponent immediately has to look at this and think, you know what, I need to get rid of this, otherwise my kill potential on my opponent is just drastically reduced. I need to think about this card some more, as well as combos and things like that, but I can see that there are going to be some uses for it. I think that it can be squeezed in. The health is low. In terms of our solid minion test, look at it, it's a 4/4/4, so it's already worth playing. It will do something, and then it has a pretty solid beneficial extra effect. It is a pseudo taunt. As I throw everything on the floor, I do apologise. It is a pseudo taunt indeed. It kind of forces your opponent to take some action against it before they continue to other stuff, or they could actually equally ignore it if there's nothing else on the table for it to be concerned about. The Anubisath Sentinel. Next up, I think this is strong. It's a good, solid minion. Slightly expensive for its attack and health, but Death Rattle will give a random friendly minion +3/+3, and on the Blizzard panel at BlizzCon, I believe that Mr. Brody himself said it is the most powerful Death Rattle effect we have in Hearthstone. I'm sure someone else will try and compare that, but it feels pretty solid. Pretty solid. So I can see that, at the very least in Arena, that's a great pick. When it dies, it's going to buff something up pretty big. If you're really pressuring the Paladin decks and things, it might be a weird drop in a Secret Paladin deck. Of course, Secret Paladins revolve around playing the Mysterious Challenger. How long until that gets nerfed, we ask ourselves. And making sure that you built a board, and that board then gets constructed, buffed, and really solidified. This gives you that. It's not the most cost efficient. There are other things maybe you could drop at 5, sludge belchers and things. That Paladin deck generally has a few later game drops as well. It's kind of not all in so early, but the Anubisath Sentinel, I'd probably say that's unlikely that'll be silenced. There'll probably be bigger silencing threats. Could be interesting, particularly buffing up Lily decks. Blizzard were liking the Finn puns with this one because we got Finley Mrrgglton. So hey, a Paladin turn 10, anything can happen. Yeah. Summoned 7 Murlocs that died this game. Now, I think the BlizzCon panel said that includes your opponent's Murlocs as well as your own. So that could be crazy madness. You're playing a Murloc Paladin deck and you're playing your Murloc Knights and craziness and all that kind of stuff, and you really want to go nuts. Hey, it refills the board in the late game. It can give your Paladin a last massive charge. Everyfin is cool. We've got Everyfin is awesome. That is coming up. The Lego Movie and Murlocs put together. Archthief Rafaam. Now, Archthief Rafaam, say that one slowly. He is the nemesis. He is the mysterious, cloaked, shadowy figure following our League of Explorers as they attempt to assemble the stuff of the origination. Battle Cry, discovering a powerful artifact. Now, I did not grab the artifact cards. They indeed are available. What I'm quickly just going to do is go ahead and pull them up. In fact, I wrote this down. In my notes as I was watching BlizzCon. If I open the right copy of a popular word processing piece of software, we can absolutely grab those in a couple of seconds. But basically, these powerful artifacts are expensive artifact cards to play that then proceed to do all kinds of craziness. So, we will grab those and have a quick go through them. Do apologise, give me 2 seconds. There we are, there we have it. And we have the notes, fabulous. Here we go. So the 3 artefacts that you can grab are number 1, the Mirror of Doom, which I believe they're all 10 mana artefacts. And the Mirror of Doom fills board with 3/3 zombies. Fills your board with 3/3 zombies, and who doesn't want a 3/3 zombie? Number 2 is the Timepiece of Horror, which does 10 random damage amongst enemies. So think like an Avenging Wrath, the Paladin card that zaps for 8 damage. Just one of those for 10 that does 10. Big damage everywhere. Last but not least, the Lantern of Power, which gives a minion +10/+10 for 10 mana. And that was indeed illustrated in the Blizzard stream by just pewing something in the face. Very, very fun indeed. So Rafaam, you play, you get a big artifact, and that, as well as playing Rafaam, you can then use that artifact in some way to finish the game. So not only do you have a 7 attack, 8 mana minion, 7 attack, 8 health minion, but you also have either a full board of 3/3 zombies, a 10 random amongst enemies, or a 10/10 minion. Jay-Z Kerr says a 10/10 with an Iron Beak Owl, sad times. It is indeed, but I'm guessing you don't want to play that 10/10. You want to get effect out of the 10/10 on that turn. If you were leaving it a 10/10 that can attack till next turn or something, then yeah, I'd want to finish the game with that if I could at all. But of course, if you have no minion on the table, if you have to set up a minion with charge and similar, then it could be painful indeed. So there we go, that's the Archthief. Can he finish games? I reckon he could. What deck would he naturally fit in? I don't know. He's not a bad card in and of himself, but it's whether that there's a deck that he can fit in which doesn't have better finishing options available, is how I'd probably summarise it. Brann Bronzebeard, your battle cries trigger twice. There's all kinds of fun. Now, the thing I like about Brann is a legendary, and remember that these legendaries who are part of the League of Explorers, you get one at the end of each wing. So Brann is one you will collect. Equally Reno Jackson, equally Elise, equally Sir Finley Mrrgglton. You will grab all of those guys. Your battle cry is triggering twice. Brann will live a turn or 2. He's strong enough maybe to live maybe a turn at turn 3, coin him out turn 2. Double battle cries is fun. You could be drawing 2 cards with sorry, that's a death rattle. But there'll be fun battle cries you can trigger in. I can probably see we've had death rattle decks, battle cry decks, not so common, but I can see people trying to use Brann to abuse battle cries some. I need to have a think of a few, but he's not a bad card in and of himself. The Cursed Blade for Warriors. Double all damage dealt to your hero. Now this is super hyper mega aggressive early game control warrior style. Don't forget, warriors have got the Fury Wind Axe, which is great in terms of 3 attack, 2 durability, 2 mana, clearing minions in the early game. You then also, of course, have Death's Bite, turn 4, which you can do stuff with. Do you really want to go so hyper aggro against an aggro deck? And this is what a Cursed Blade is. This is an aggro clearer that helps you clear the board with doubling all damage dealt to your hero. It's high pain. You need to judge if the reward is worth it. It's not bad in theory, but you need to have something else to replace it with. It's good to really stamp your control on the board early game. I'll be honest with you, unless there's a real surfeit of even earlier rushing than there is already, if you have a control warrior deck and you get your right mulligan, you can deal with it. I'm going to go ahead and say I don't think that you need Cursed Blade unless you want extra added insurance against a really rush heavy meta. So it could be wrong. It's not bad. I can see its uses. You use it once, use it twice, throw it away and replace it with another weapon. Don't take that double damage. You can armor up as a warrior, keep yourself strong in the early game, but it is painful taking that extra damage, particularly when the warrior is trying to mitigate the damage. There's some use. Curse of Rafaam. I like this card. It's Warlock. Give your opponent a cursed card, and while they hold it, they take 2 damage on their turn. Now, they get a card, I believe it's 2 mana, and the cursed card they can get rid of by playing it. So to get rid of the curse, they just have to play the card, or discard the card, get it out of their hand, so that you force your opponent to spend mana to not take damage, which is good. It, kind of you throw it to them, and you effectively lose 2 of your own mana by playing it, and then you force upon them the decision if they want to waste 2 of their own mana next turn. So its very worst, it's effectively a stall. At its best, if your opponent really wants to play other things instead of it, say if you're in an advantageous position and you pop your opponent one of these, they have to make a decision. Do they take that additional damage by keeping it and trying to go ahead with their game plan, or do they just throw it away, but then does that give you the chance to actually get further ahead? It's a very interesting one there. Not bad. Dark Peddler, Battlecry, discovering a 1-cost. Remember that this is also Warlock, and Warlocks have plenty of fun 1-cost cards that they can use, as well as other bits and bobs. So remember that discovering is neutral minions or your own class cards. Remember us talking about the discover effect. So if I was using Brann and I had a double Battlecry, I could discover 2 1-cost cards. Maybe you can drop Brann into a early game rushy Warlock deck with a Dark Peddler. 2/2/2, he's a solid minion, and then you get a free 1-cost card that you can smooth out your turn 3, turn 4 mana curve with if you've got other low drops. I like it. It's strong. I think it will see some play. I think people will try and experiment with this in Warlock Rush decks. A Battlecry Warlock deck could be quite interesting. I just like the fact that if I get Brann down, I throw down a Dark Peddler and then have 2 more 1-cost cards. I'm getting insane value out of this in the early game if I can put together that value. Dark Peddler, Brann Rush. Whether it's viable or not, don't know, but let's see. It's a fun combo and things you could do with it, and a decent card of itself anyway. Dart Trap for the Hunters. When an opposing hero power is used, deal 5 damage to a random enemy. So I like having a few Hunter Secrets down if we are playing the Mad Scientists to be fishing those cards out. Then Dart Trap is not bad. Good little something else to have in the arsenal. And 5 damage to a random enemy. Well, of course, this could be over nuking a particular minion that has low or little health. It could be doing a hideous amount of damage to your opponent's hero if you have that down at the right time. It'll be interesting to see how hunters can use this and how people work and play against it. I'm going to say it's situationally strong. It's not a card that's going to be amazing or do the best value efficiency for mana in every single situation. But if you can set it up, very nice. We have a Desert Camel. This is another druid beast. Battlecry, putting a 1-cost minion from each deck into the battlefield. Very, very cool. Now, there are things that you can kind of sort, for example, with this. So let's say the one that was highlighted in the Blizz panel was the Injured Cavalier. Now, if this puts, if you're playing an Injured Cavalier, let's say for example you had an Injured Cavalier who does 3 damage to this minion when you play him, and he's a 1 mana cost to attack full health. If you put him into play rather than play him from your hand, then there's no Battlecry. So the Injured Cavalier does not take 3 damage. He's instead a 2 attack, 4 health minion for a mere 1 mana. And if he's in your deck, amazing. So Desert Camel lets you do some cool things like shortcut. Of course, if your opponent doesn't have a 1-cost minion, then you've got yourself a free minion up. It's another way that druids can potentially wall off against aggression in the early game. And equally, with the Grand Tournament, we saw Blizzard offering a few other spells, a few other options to beef up the druid early game so that you weren't so reliant on some of the other traditional like Wraths and things like our friend Zombie Chow. Blizzard definitely giving druids some more early game different options, and then the beast synergy that they're dropping into druid, very good with that card. Just in terms of before we move on, actually, 2 attack, 4 health for 3 mana, and a pretty strong effect that you want to make the most of with 1-drops in your deck. I can see him being used. Let's find out how he can be broken best. The Genie of Zephyrs. Whenever you cast a spell on another friendly minion, cast a copy of it on this one. Buff decks, Powered Shields, Blessing of Kings. If you can get a few of these down and done, you can get mana value galore and stats value galore. The Blessing of Kings you play will be just insane in terms of the mana you save and the stats and table presence you get. Pair this up with anything else in a buff deck. Buff Paladin has shown popularity. This could very easily drop its way in there as a solid transitioning. That card is Hunter. Was it a Hunter Camel? I do apologise if it was a Hunter Camel. Yes, it is a Hunter card, isn't it? My apologies. My apologies. I'm getting all confused. There you go. Good beastie camel kind of synergy. Yep. Okay, so let's take that back in terms of druidness. I was getting a bit confused. Thank you very much, Religion, for your correction. We have an Eerie Statue next. Okay, so in terms of coming back to the camel, I still like it. You can pull out things like web spinners. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. So you're still going to get good value. But in terms of early game. How would you fit him in? He's not an aggressive hunter rush card, but he might let you transition to a mid-game hunter style play. Eerie Statue, can't attack unless it's the only minion in the battlefield. The way Ben Brody described this was sort of, you turn around and there's only the Eerie Statue in the room, and then it gets closer and closer and closer before not doing anything. So you could silence it and then it can attack, pretty simple, or you can create it with the usual tank value. This is like a Ancient Watcher on steroids, but it can attack if it's the only minion left, or you can silence it. It will have use. Defenders of Argus, Sunfury Protectors, and the like. Elise Starseeker, shuffle the map to the Golden Monkey into your deck. Now, Elise, when you get the Golden Monkey, I can't remember what the Golden Monkey card said, but the Golden Monkey then did something, and then the final thing that you play is replace your hand with legendary minions. A big welcome to Raj. Elise Starseeker. So the Golden Monkey, I think, the final card that you actually play is replacing the hand and deck with legendary minions. So if you can play Elise and then get the map to the Golden Monkey, and then you draw the map to the Golden Monkey and then play that, and then you get the Golden Monkey, then you replace your hand and deck with legendary minions, then it's just raining legendaries. Absolutely amazing. So all very well and good. So Elise is fun to start with, but I reckon that if she's kind of splashable. You can throw her in, and she's kind of like one of those things. It's kind of like the Burrowing Mine from the Iron Juggernaut that can just be super value later in the game. And yeah, replacing your entire deck with legendaries at the end of a game. If you're playing a late game deck of some description, it'd be pretty fun. As soon as you throw down Elise, your opponent's going to be like, oh, if I get to late game, throw it into a handlock or something. Throw it into some kind of late game deck where you stall to the end and then unleash a swarm of legendaries on your foe if you can survive. I think there's going to be some fun deck creation with that. At the very worst, fun. Now, I really like this card. Priest cards in the last few expansions, they've snuck in. They've sort of just dropped them in there and said, oh, it's Entomb, don't worry about it. Beware Entomb, and beware the other priest card that we're going to have a look at later on. Choosing an enemy minion and shuffling it into your deck for 6 mana is just like... I'm a big priest fan, but this card is so solid. It is expensive, yes. Are there things like Power Word, Shadow Word Pain, Shadow Word Death? Of course, that go for straight up destruction, but this, for the mana value, it denies your opponent the play that they've made, and it gives you a potentially big play later on in the game. Sludge Belcher, do you need to protect yourself? Grab one of those. Big legendary, getting in your way, get rid of that. Put it in your deck, use it later in the game, get the value later in the game twice over. This will see play. The Japanese, Chinese style of priest play, which has a lot of control, a lot of backwards and forth smacking in the late game with big cards, the deck that we've done on the Hearthstone Half Hour before, we will certainly see, I think, some of this happening at various points. So beware this card. I think it's certainly going to be popular, and the other priest cards that priests have got, Japanese priest is still, I think, pretty strong. Expect Entomb to be frustrating you in a priest deck near you soon. Good stuff. Ethereal Conjurer. Battlecry of discovering a spell. Now discover, remember, 3 cards in your hand. Your spells only. Your class cards only. So that's the spell that you'll discover. Otherwise, this is a mage card, so of course you're going to discover a mage spell. But otherwise, this minion is okay. 6 attack, 3 health. Will die quick. You discover the spell. What's it going to be? We just don't know. I judge this as alright. It will get killed pretty quick. You'll be lucky if you get the 6 attack value from that. Is discovering a spell worth 5 mana? Depends on what spell you pick. Could be amazing, could be terrible. Okay. This is especially for J-Kers. Everyfin is awesome. I'm not going to sing any more than that. But Everyfin, if you're a Murloc, is awesome. This is like a bloodlusting Murloc. Look at it. Crazy. It's a shaman card, so bloodlust makes sense. Give your minions 2/2 and costs 1 less for each Murloc you control. So this is Murloc Bloodlust that reduces in cost depending on how many Murlocs you have on the table. Now remember our good friend Neptulon, who throws a big bunch of Murlocs into your hand. You want to play Neptulon, you want to play your Murlocs. Everything is awesome. Dear me. The Lego movie. when you're living the dream, you're living that Murloc dream. So I like this card. It's a trend that came with Blackrock Mountain. The more of X that happens, the more mana cost is reduced, encouraging you to combo things together. Shaman Murloc, Neptulon, last expansion, definitely a thing. Sorry, 2 expansions with Blackrock. Murloc Shaman, totally fun. Sham Murloc is a thing, not a viable thing, but screw it. I think that Sham Murloc is certainly viable, but it's going to be interesting. This is certainly pushing people towards Sham Murloc. So yes, fun at the least. Excavated Evil. Was this the other priestly card? It was. I think. Is there one more? No, I think there's just 2. There was something else that I thought was evil. Maybe it was just in 2. Deal 3 to all. Shuffle this card into your opponent's deck. Again, for priests, kind of happy days. If you're playing aggro as a priest, if you're playing Japanese priest or JP Priestly or anything like that, Chinese priest as it were, you generally have zombie chows. You have your various early game cards that can just trade very, very well with aggro. Dealing 3 to all. This is effectively, if you don't want to use a Holy Nova, you can just nuke the board with this, and then your opponent will pick it. At the very worst, it will be a duff pick. At the most, they can decide if they want to nuke the board with it or not as well. So you will need to watch out for it later in the game, but it could be a nice little tech to use against anything else. Now, if you need to go exploring, as Blizzard said at Blizzcon, you need to have your Explorer's Hat and your Explorer's Torch, which I believe everyone is going to get straight away. Explorer's Hat, if you grab the adventure, give a minion 1/1 and Death Rattle, add an Explorer's Hat to your hand, so you can buff a minion, and then when that minion dies, you get the hat back, unless it's, of course, silenced. And then when you get that hat back, then you can play it again. It's Indiana Jones and, Harrison Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Uldaman Ark. But hey, not the most mana efficient buff, but certainly a bunch of fun, and it's the gift that keeps on giving. Into the Fierce Monkey. The Fierce Monkey is... No, this is a druid card. No, it's a warrior card. I'm getting my colour blindness and edges a little bit confused. The Fierce Monkey has Taunt, so 3/3/4. I think this is a nice solid card. It's got good stats, it's got Taunt, it's good for bolstering and sticking up big walls as a warrior in the early game. Warrior tanking was a thing with Grand Tournament. This card is all around solid. See how you can drop it into a warrior tanky bolster start deck. Forgotten Torch for the mages amongst us. Steal 3, shuffle a Roaring Torch into your deck that deals 6 damage, and then Roaring Torch. I can't remember the mana cost, but it does 6 damage. So this isn't bad as mage control. You don't have the freeze, but what you can certainly do, so more tools for a bolster deck. Yeah, absolutely, Raj. Couldn't agree more with that monkey. Shuffling Roaring Torch into your deck. I think it's maybe 4 mana that does that 6 damage, but not bad for mages. You would consider perhaps running this in a spell-heavy, stally type deck on top of your Frostbolts instead of your Frostbolts. A bit more expensive, but you get that additional zap. And remember, if you're trying to finish with a mage deck in the late game, you throw Fireballs and Pyro, potentially a Pyro. If you have another mana option for 6, and you can double the amount of Fireballs effectively that you have through playing some early game Forgotten Torches, you can control enemy minions. You can then go ahead and do that 6 deck damage maybe later in the game with the, I think it's the Flaming Torch, or something like that. Roaring Torch, says it on the card. Then it's a useful tool. I think it'll see play. Fossilized Devilsaur, 8/8/8. Terrorizing an arena near you, I believe is the Blizzard phrase on the stream. If you control a beast, gain Taunt. Druids have beasts, Hunters have beasts, Neutrals have beasts. It's a solid stat, 8/8/8. There is nothing bad about that card. Great draft in arena for finishing the game. A bit of a weird tech for beast decks of some descriptions. There are other beasts you would rather have. There are probably other 8-drops you would rather have. But it's a solid card. So, a bunch of fun. The Gorillabot. I believe that this was put in by Sir Finley Mrrgglton to help survey the gorillas of Stranglethorn Vale, as he is looking for the lost city of Stranglethorn. If you just control a mech, another mech, discover a mech. Beast Druid could be a thing, says Raj. I think that we should have a chat about that, definitely. Maybe we can explore making some decks. That'll be good fun. 4/3/4. Stats are okay. If you control a mech, another mech, discover a mech. Take it easy, JK. It's good to see you. So, mech decks. If you just control another mech, discover a mech. That could be any neutral mech, or one of your class mechs. So the Gorillabot is a pretty decent bridge, and if you take a look at him, remember that you have the spider tank that's a 3/3/4, and this is a 4/3/4, so he's not a bad alternative option in the mid game if you're going to be trying to bridge things up with mechs. So getting more mech value, pushing that mech swarm into the early mid game. Gorillabot, certainly experiment with him in a mech deck. It's the huge toad. Here we can see a normal sized toad. If you just look carefully in the middle there is the normal sized toad for emphasis. Death Rattle deal 1 damage to a random enemy. Now 2/3/2 is a brilliant solid. It's like the Bloodfin Raptor. It's that 2/3/2, great stats for its core cost. Big welcome to Coral. Good to have you with. The 1 damage to a random enemy is not so bad. This is a pretty solid early game card. Not awful if you're playing against aggro, but I feel that because it's a beast, can you drop it into a hunter? Maybe as a bit of a different option. Primarily, probably own arena. Toad trades with 4 toughness guides. He certainly does. If you can get that little random damage to a random enemy, waking them up. Coral gives a good shout in terms of how our toad can be trading. Jeweled Scarab, discover a 3 cost. Now the jewels, the shininess, the goodness. This is interesting. Couple of mana. It kind of fits into the Novice Engineer school of playing something for 2 mana and getting a benefit for a card that dies. Obviously, Novice Engineer, you draw the card. Here you discover a 3 cost. A 3 cost card of your class. A 3 cost card of neutral minions. Not awful whatsoever. See it in Arena. In other constructed decks, yet to work out whether that will come in any meaningful way, but certainly fun. So a jungle Moonkin has to be a druid card. Has to be. Both players have spell damage +2. Gives you evil swipe ability. Imagine your 4 damage swipe coming out and striking the table down in its horror and pain. Big welcome to everyone joining on stream, by the way. Do sign in, do say hello. So you can get some nasty Wraths. Imagine a Wrath for 5, a Wrath, however you'd like to pronounce it. But then your opponent also has spell damage. Does it mean nothing to them? Does it mean something else to them? Depends on what cards they have, depends on what deck you're playing. Gives you some nice early to mid-game reach as a druid with your spells, which could be interesting. So, situational, but certainly could be powerful. I like the Keeper of Uldaman as a pally card. Set a minion's attack and health to 3. That then can let you have a very good efficient trade with the Keeper of Uldaman. Just think of your Uldor Peacekeeper. That's what I was looking for. That sets attack to 1 but leaves the health intact. This sets both to 3, which means that you are going to be able to remove that card next go. If I've just taken out a horrible big attacking minion and made it 1 attack 8 health, it's still got 8 health. That's still quite hard for me to remove. Here, I can actually trade it away next go. Another nice control option for pallies. I think this will see some play. In terms of whether people want to put this in and forego the attacking options of a mid-range pally. There are a lot of 4 and 5 cards that are quite important in pally. If you're going more late game, you might use this as a staller, as a paladin. If you're going more mid-range, I maybe would forfeit this. But yeah, Coral says Keeper looks good. I could not agree more. I think that's just overall solid. And of course, remember our sort of, for new players out there, solid stats, 4/3/4, a little bit expensive. But of course, the attack loss is more than matched out by that battle cry. And as Coral mentioned, very good point, you can buff your Silver Hand recruits as well. You can buff your little minions. You can set a minion. It's not just your opponent's minions. It is your minions too. The Mounted Raptor. Hunter-wise, summon a random 1 cost when it dies. It's a solid minion. It'll help you pressure up a little bit more. Very much liking that. Solid card. In terms of the beasts, there is this trend. This is Hunter. Please tell me it's Hunter. I forget my card back sometimes. So summoning that random 1 cost means that there's this early mid-game Hunter, but it's not rush focused. It's giving you cards that can bridge a bit more than just be all out. The random 1 cost when it dies. It's druid. Come on, I need to get my card backs together. Do forgive me. I am slightly colourblind. Little spoiler, and I know that the design is different, so I need to pay attention. Okay, druid wise. In fact, we'll swap what I said for the other card that I thought was druid earlier with this one. This gives you that ability to trade in the early to mid game as a druid. But 3/3/2, a little bit more expensive than its stats, but the death rattle is sound. And remember, a random 1 cost can be pretty evil. Murloc Tinyfin, nothing hugely to say about him apart from he's adorable, as some people would say. But also, he's kind of like Wisp, and he's a Murloc. And remember that Murlocs benefit from the Murloc tribe. I'm glad you guys, save me from my blindness. I kind of forget the backgrounds to Wisp power creeps. Totally is, Coral. I couldn't agree more. Just remember all of the good buffing you can do with Murlocs. Murloc Tinyfin, if you see him at the deck, I'd put 2 of him in a Murloc deck. I'd buff the heck out of him and watch him run rampant as he destroys the world as we know it. Beware Murloc Tinyfin. And now Museum Curator. Priests. The battle cry of discovering a death rattle. Play it and you get a death rattle. Again, any death rattle card you have, any death rattle card in the game, who knows what that could be. I need to go and look through the death rattle pool to see how effective that is. Some death rattles are horrific, some pretty good. 2/1/2, you can do some trading. Maybe you can buff him a bit in the early game. If you're playing a priest death rattle, remember of course priests used to have a bit of fun with undertakers and all that. An undertaker priest was very much a thing before the undertaker got nerfed. My verdict, okay. Naga Sea Witch, high five. That's what Naga Sea Witch does. High fives all around. Your cards cost 5. Now the nice combos that this sets up, think of it in the vein of Emperor Thaurissan. You can play the Naga Sea Witch, and then next turn you could play, I don't know, any big card for 5 mana. Play a Ragnaros on turn 6. Play anything on turn 6. Anything on turn 6. Mind Control on turn 6. You know, I would drop this in a deck that's going for the late game with big, chunky, horrible stuff. Drop it, accelerate. Even in a druid, imagine in a ramp druid, that could be nuts. It's going to enable some later game decks. It's a really, really interesting form of acceleration. Naga Sea Witch, I want to play with. Think about how you can build a late game deck that comes out quite well on its own and can survive till the late game anyway, but with 2 Naga Sea Witch, it's like sticking a massive steroid jab into it and saying, right, let's get this going earlier. Fan of this card, it will say play, creatively speaking. Now, the 5/5 is actually a solid minion in its own right. Obsidian Destroyer for warriors, I quite like this one. At the end of your turn, summon a 1/1 Scarab with Taunt. Solid card, remember it's Hogger-like, but it's harder to kill than Hogger. So although Hogger's tanks are 2 attack and 2 health that he spawns at the end of every turn, these 1/1 Scarabs, the Obsidian Destroyer is going to be harder to remove from the table than Hogger is. Hogger can be face killed. The Obsidian Destroyer will have to be CC'd or a lot harder to face kill. Warriors who want to live a bit longer to the late game, I can see it being splashed. I will certainly give it a go in a control warrior or some form of warrior. I don't think it's bad at all. It helps me set up for the late game a bit more if my sludge belchers have been removed. But Snake, destroy any minion damaged by this minion. I believe that's a rogue background, correct me if I'm wrong. Just exploring my love for Naga in the chat. So destroy any minion damaged by this minion. This is pretty much an assassin, the patient assassin. There's one other card with this particular text whose name I temporarily forget, but this is not stealthed. However, you can pretty much use this to trade at any time if you keep it alive. Very, very cool. Do have a look. Not bad. You don't want to be playing that early game because for the 1 health it will just get traded away. Its biggest value proposition is really if you throw it out there and then make sure that it's taking out something that costs a lot more than 1 mana. Keep it alive for a turn behind a tank or similar. Raven Idol, choose one, discover a minion or discover a spell. I believe this is Druid. Gives druids a nice early game way of finding something else to help them in their battle for survival. People will give it a go, I'm sure. Reliquary Seeker. Battlecry, if you have 6 other minions, gain 4/4. Hard to get 6 minions on the table, but as was said on stream, Warlocks have ways of doing that. Implosion. Implosion. Sorry, a little bit of a cough there. So, if you're implosioning, if you're going to be implosioning or similar, with that kind of demon zoo, demonic zoo, or that, I've forgotten the name of the implosion type zoo deck that people went for, that mid-range warlocky style. you can splash reliquaries, and suddenly if you have a big fat board full of minions, it's very situational, but then you can play that as the additional thorn in the coffin, as well as many other things. So, fan of Reliquary Seeker, find a way of making it work. Reno, one of our heroes in the League of Explorers, if your deck contains no more than one of any card, fully heal your hero. So you can either play an entire deck of singles, or you can only play Reno when you know in your head that you've only got singles or everything else left in your deck for a full heal. So it could be powerful. Now think about this, in the late game, think of the late game of a control warrior. When you have legendaries only, you've played through all of your cards, you've stalled to the late game, you're in that late game warrior situation where you're trying to heal. Have you put enough armor on? A druid, tree of lives, or something crazy? This guy, I'm going to try this guy in a control warrior. I could, to be fair, control warrior lists are quite tight, but has use. Think of a stall deck where you are down to your last singles. As long as you can card count, as long as you can remember your cards, he's going to be a full heal, and that is going to be very nasty. Rumbling Elemental for the Shamans. After you play a battle cry, deal 2 damage to a random enemy. Solid, 2/6. We'll make some trades. And of course he's kind of like a the mage card whose name I temporarily forget, the Flame Waker. But does 2 damage to random enemies. Could be the hero, could be otherwise. You've got a nice health pool that will keep him alive for quite a period of time. And that aside, can trade nicely against aggro, playing battle cries afterwards. A battle cry shaman style deck. Remember that Murloc, so this could be smashed in some kind of Murloc as well. Not bad. Unsure whether it will be a fully competitive pick, but we're going to have a look at meta index. I need the Theorycraft. I like Sacred Trial. Secrets Paladin is a thing. When your opponent has at least 3 minions and plays another, destroy it. If your opponent is getting ahead, lasers and axes and all of the kind of things that Indiana Jones did not very much like in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Oh, sorry, The Last Crusade. Only the worthy, the penitent man will pass. The breath of God. But with Secret Paladins and Mysterious Challenger putting loads of secrets into the play, Sacred Trial is good. Remember, it's not going to trigger until he has at least 3 and plays another. Now, your opponent can play around that. Make sure that they don't play big minions, play small minion if they've got 3 into the 4 to try and remove it. But it's slowing your opponent down. So if you squeeze in a Sacred Trial into your secret, then it might not be awful. So Finley Mrrgglton probably replaces a Repentance in Secret Paladin. Says Coral. Yes, I would say that it certainly could. I will certainly experiment with it as soon as it's out. So Finley Mrrgglton. Sorry, I need another slurp of the finest. N7T. Battlecry of discovering a new basic hero power. So, pretty fun. Let's say you're a priest and you want another random power. Why not? How would this be of use to you? Your hero power is normally quite centric to you, but if you luck into a hunter power or something like that, something pretty imber, all hero powers are useful in some form or another. So it's really whether you play a deck that means that you like another hero power more than your own. I need to think about Sir Finley. He's fun on the surface of things. So the Summoning Stone we jump into. Whenever you cast a spell, summon a random Murloc of the same cost. Random Murloc, sorry. Random minion. Right, so this is kind of like the Great Summoners Challenge, or the Great Summoners Duel. The brain's dying. It's only a Monday, as Raginald said. It's been a long Monday. It is the Tavern Brawl. I got there eventually. It's the Tavern Brawl. Whenever you cast a spell, summon a random minion of the same cost. So if you can protect that for a turn, if it doesn't get silenced, you can unleash Cry Havoc, throw it in a mage deck with lots of cheap spells, like the Great Tavern Brawl and a Chaos Will Ensue. We'll see play. Tomb Pillager for your rogues. Death Rattle of adding the coin, 4/5/4. Stats wise, this is fine. May get taken out because of its 4 health. The coin will help you trigger your combos. For a mid-range deck, I believe they mentioned in the BlizzCon panel that they're looking for a more rogue minion style play. Rogue has been a lot of spells, a lot of Tinker Sharp Sword Oil recently, a lot of let's stay alive with spells and then finish with horrific combos in the late game. This is encouraging a more rogue early to mid game minion centric play. A solid card will see some play, will trigger combos, which will hopefully encourage more roguey minion-y play. solid in its stats, I think it will be played. Team Spider, Battlecry of Discovering a Beast, slightly expensive, a free beast, could be great, could be terrible, could be a bridge, could be a trigger factor in Hunter decks, but again, it's okay, depending on what that beast is. I wouldn't deem it as being instantly competitive, but we'll see. Tunnel Trog, whenever you overload, gain 1 attack per locked mana crystal. The gift that keeps on giving. This is kind of like the Undertaker with the Death Rattles. It's kind of like the Secret Keeper with the secrets in a Secret Paladin. The super mana efficient scales the more you do. Mana Worm in a Mage. Shamans get this option now in the early game too. Whenever you overload, that's going to get bigger and bigger attack. If you can buff health, all well and good. It will get some good value trades. If you can overload turn 2, if you then Lava Shock turn 3, so on and so forth, you can combo and chain your abilities, as well as having that 3 health, buff its attack a bit. It's a potent trading force. Unearthed Raptor. Now let me just get my card backs together. We're going back to Rogue from Shaman here. Choose a friendly minion, gain a copy of its Death Rattle effect. There are lots of nasty Death Rattles. How about you surprise someone with this in the late game, and you put a Death Rattle on your Sneed Shredder or something similar. That could be absolutely hilarious. Would very much enjoy that very much. So I think this is good. We'll see play the Death Rattles. It all depends on the strong Death Rattles you have in your deck. Look to combine it with evil Death Rattle effects. Oh wow, we are already onto Wobbling Runts. And that is our last card, I do believe. So Wobbling Runts with a Death Rattle. I believe the description was they're all stacked up tall. And then when you kill it with the Death Rattle, you then fight all of them individually. So 6/2/6. If you can find ways of buffing these, don't underestimate this. Think of this in combo druid. What happens if I use a Wobbling Runt? And remember that combo druids want to build their board. Or a shaman who wants to bloodlust, for example. So if I throw this down in the mid game, my opponent's like, it's just some Wobbling Runts, and then suddenly they kill it, they don't silence it, suddenly I have 3 2/2 runts, and then suddenly I combo, I Force of Nature, I Savage Roar. Suddenly I throw down a Bloodlust, and my opponent suddenly looks at the board and sees 3 2/2 runts become like 3 5/2 runts and just goes, could work, it's splashable. It gives you that extra bit of board presence that if you can buff and take advantage of it, could be very fun indeed. Cora jumps in and says, good value even without any tricks. I agree. You could even just throw a Sun Fury Protector, a Defender of Argus on that, if you need to, and then you can get a good bit of tanking in there as well. So that is all 45 cards. That's taken us a little bit more than our standard Hearthstone half hour, a good 40 to 50 minutes or so. So thank you very much for sticking with. What do we think of those first time around? Going to have to do some deck theory crafting. Expect to see over the next few weeks some 2-minute deck guides. We're going to get those going again. No, they were very popular a few months earlier this year before I had to take a little break from YouTube. And we're going to do some theory crafting. We're going to do some New Player Mondays. When the remember, of course, that this adventure releases wing by wing. We will earn cards wing by wing. So we won't see the full meta effect of this for 5 weeks because they're taking a week off for Thanksgiving in terms of releases. So we will get all of these cards probably 5-6 weeks time. You know, early to mid-December is when we'll have everything from this particular expansion. So thank you very, very much for tuning in. Favourite cards, I think there's some cool stuff for priests. Paladins, certainly some strong cards I very much liked. A couple of Paladin cards. The new Secret, pretty solid. The buffing card or debuffing card for minions, pretty solid too. Everyone's got some interesting tricks. It's going to be interesting how Discover works. A few synergies with Death Rattles and Battle Cries. A couple of interesting legendaries. I think it's going to be a fun expansion. Adventure and expansion, 2 different things. It will be a fun adventure with some interesting cards that remember, of course, what Naxxramas did. Naxxramas was an adventure, and the cards in that shaped the meta very much for the next few months after. So even though expansions are the big releases, don't count out that I think there'll be some interesting meta changes with this adventure. Cheers for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, do like or comment, let us know what we could do better. What do you think of the new cards? Let us know below. It would be great to hear from you. Do subscribe if you'd like to see more. We do, of course, 2-minute deck guides. Hearthstone half hour is starting back up again after a little month break or two. We've had a lot of Overwatch content recently on our channel, but Hearthstone is very much back, so don't leave us. If you're new to us, welcome. We will be sharing some other content too, but Hearthstone's still a big part of our lives. Do join us live on twitch.tv/FailCraft Cast. That schedule is changing. We're no longer Monday through Friday, but we're going to try and stream a few times a week. And follow us on Twitter at FailCraft Casts. Last but not least, the website is failcraft.org. Thanks very much for tuning in. If you're live on stream, don't go away. We're going to have a quick game of Overwatch or two. If you're on YouTube, come join us. Hopefully see you sometime soon. Take it easy. Okay guys, we are going to be jumping into Overwatch now, so I'm just going to quickly reboot the stream, so I'll be